Hello to everyone. I am Denard. I'm an associate professor, and this video is part of the Shamanet activities that I have won. I would like to say that these videos are complementary to the books, notes, or lectures that I or other colleagues have given during this period. So this video aims only to help you with complementary information, and you can see them at the moment that you are more relaxed and you feel more comfortable to know further knowledge regarding the EU law. Without losing time, I would like to start immediately by focusing on the first video, that is the difference between the EU legal system and the international law. So basically the goal of this video is to give some basic knowledge between the difference between international legal system and the supranational legal system, which is the EU. I have to immediately underline that the EU is a sui generis organization, and therefore it has several similarities with the national system, with the constitution, especially when we are speaking about the federal system, and we are going to see this in the other video, but also it has several similarities with the international law. Some of the most important international organizations are the OECD, NATO, and other international organizations. I have to say that immediately after the Second World War, countries understood that it was much better for them to cooperate with each other and to make international organization rather than to fulfill their individualistic goal. And therefore, after the 1945, we are going to see several important international organizations. One of them is the OECD, which is a sort of first European organization of the post-war period. It started with the Marshall Plan, which aimed the reconstruction of the Western Europe, and then in 1916, USA and Canada became member. Then later, this international organization, it was transformed of what we have now as the OECD. And now it has a new additional goal, which is to promote economic progression in the third world through help. An important international organization is also NATO. It started in 1949. It started as a military alliance between the US and Canada. Its goal was basically to stop the influence of the communist bloc and the Soviet Union. And now today we have more than 13 member states. The majority of them are from the EU member states. However, Sweden and Finland are not part of it, but recently in 2022, they asked to be part of that after the Russian invasion in Ukraine. In addition to European countries, there are also other countries that are not part in the EU, such as the USA and Canada. Recently, as I said, it joined also Northern Macedonia. Then in 1954, there is the Western European Union, which aimed to strengthen security policy cooperation between countries of Europe. However, since this organization was similar to what NATO, Council of Europe, and EU did in 2011, this organization was dissolved. Here, visually, I have tried to make it as easy as possible, the difference between international law, European law, and national law. And so you can see there is a legal hierarchy between them. Within international law, we have several different international organizations such as UN, World Health Organization, or here in Europe, it is really important, the Council of Europe. Then we have the European law, which we are going to see later. There is the TFU, Treaty for the Functioning of the European Union, and TEU, and then which are the basics and do not have a legal hierarchy between them, and the EU law. And then later we have the national law. Regarding the entrance of the international law within the national law, it is really important to notice the difference between the monist and dualist system. Because while in the monist system, for example, in the Netherlands, there is no need for a formal ratification or signature of the international treaty. In case of the dualist system, a typical example is Germany. There is the need of the ratification of the international treaty in order to be part of the national system. So, as I said before, focusing on the European legal hierarchy, there is the TFU and TU. Between these two, there is no legal hierarchy. And then within sources of the European law, we have different law. Some of them are legally binding, the others are not. Five of the most important sources of the European law are the regulation, directive, decision, recommendation, and opinion. So, returning back in the international law, we have the traditional sources and non-traditional sources. Within the international law, it is really important to differentiate the traditional, the primary sources, which is the jus cogens, general principles of law, and treaties. While the jus cogens and general principles of law are going to be applied in all the countries without the need to have a ratification, in case of treaty, there is the need of ratification. And we are going to see later in the next slide the difference between the monist system and the dualist system. Then, in addition to the primary sources, there are also the secondary sources. And these are the case law, the different legal decision, and also the doctrine. The most important author or the majority of the authors, what they are going to say. Last but not least, there is also the importance of soft law documents. These documents are not legally binding for the countries. Countries are not obliged to follow, but generally countries try to follow them. It is really important to underline the importance of soft laws because in a modern system, in a group of members where it is really difficult to find a legal decision that is going to be binding for everyone, these soft laws are considered important milestones that in the future can be converted into a hard law in a concrete decision. Regarding treaties, as I said before, there is the need for ratification. The need for ratification is not necessary in case that a country is a monist system, for example, in case of the Netherlands, but is fundamental in case of a dualist system, such as, for example, Germany. In addition to that, some countries may de facto, through concludente comportamento, so with a behavior that they aim to follow this treaty without formally signing it. Even in this case, these countries, if they are going to follow a treaty for a long period, then they cannot say that formally I did not sign it and therefore it's not legally binding for my system. Another important international organization is the Council of Europe. It started in 1949 and it started as a political institution. All countries have the same power, which means that all countries have a veto. The most important international treaty that has been produced by the Council of Europe is the European Convention of Human Rights. Now, this convention is so important that Protocol 14 made possible the EU accession to the European Convention of Human Rights. However, the opinion 213 of the European Court of Justice stated, as it is written currently, the Protocol 14 cannot be part of the EU system. And therefore, in September 2020, the starting a new relaunching discussion regarding the Council of Europe and the EU in order to make possible that the EU as an EU institution enters in the Council of Europe. Another important international organization is the OSCE, or the International Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, which started in 1975 in Helsinki and currently is the world's largest organization, and it has more than 57 member states. The majority of them are in Europe, in Northern and Central Asia, and in North America. Focusing now in the case of the EU, there are the main characteristics of it is that countries decided to give part of their sovereignty to the EU institution in order to decide through the principle of subsidiarity principle, which means that in the case that it is not possible to decide for a problem in a national level, then this problem will be decided in the supranational level. Everything started in 1951 in Paris when 6 countries made the European Coal and Steel Community, which stayed in force for 50 years. Then formally in 1957 in Rome, there is the creation of the European Economic Community and the European Atomic Energy Community. The first one, the European Economic Community, it translated in several steps, and now we have the EU, while the Euratom continued to remain a different organization and is different from the EU. So, as I stated, there are several steps from 1957 to currently today. And some of the most important steps are the Treaty of Maastricht in 1992, which aimed a political unification. It underlined the principle of subsidiarity, and it so made possible the 3 different pillars. Then in 1999, always in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam, there is a further step for unification, which then brought the possibility to have the European Constitution, which was proposed in Nice in France in 2003. However, the European Constitution was not possible to be adopted because France and the Netherlands did not approve that. After stopping everything, the EU countries entered all together in 2007, and in less than 2 years, they made possible the Treaty of Lisbon. And the Treaty of Lisbon is really similar to the European Constitution proposed in 2003, but it does not mention anything regarding the flag or the symbols that are particular in a case of the state. And this was approved immediately by all the states. First, Ireland did not approve it, but then in another referendum it was approved, and Poland approved it because it was suspended its approval until it was approved in Ireland. Then currently we have the Treaty of Lisbon, as I said. It is made with the TEU and TFEU, and the Euratom continue to remain a separate part of it. As I said, there is no legal hierarchy between TEU and TFEU. The Treaty of Lisbon is really similar to the Nice Convention or European Convention proposed in Nice in 2003, but does not mention anything regarding the symbols of the EU or the flag or an anthem, because these are particular symbol of national state. And for example, it is really interesting to notice that the EU foreign minister is referred to the High Representative of the Union for Foreign Affairs and Security pillars. Then another development that was done is the fact of the absence of three pillars, because in the Netherlands during the 90s, in 1992, with the Treaty of the Treaty of Maastricht, basically there is division of the three pillars. Then regarding the enlargement, we have an enlargement. It started in 1957 with the 6 countries, the Low countries, then Italy, France, and Germany. Currently, we have 27 member states and more than 447 million EU citizens. Now, regarding the enlargement, there we have the Copenhagen criteria currently, which are the most important, but are not the only one, because then were added other criteria. These Copenhagen criteria are 3, are the political criteria, the economic criteria, and the legal criteria. And then regarding the steps, basically the European Parliament has to give its consent, the Council unanimously has to approve, then EU head of states shall give their okay, shall be ratified by all existing EU member states, and then only in that moment a country can be member of the EU. Currently, there are 27 EU member states. There are accession treaty with some of the countries, such as Turkey, Serbia, and Montenegro. It shall be underlined that in case of Iceland 2015 rejected the proposal. Currently, there are official candidates such as Albania and North Macedonia, and in June 2022, Moldova and Ukraine. There are also potential candidates such as Kosovo, Bosnia-Herzegovina, and Georgia. It is really important to underline the importance of stabilization and association agreement because there it is written, between others, that future EU member states aim to collaborate with the EU by harmonizing and aligning its internal legislation with the EU legislation. So the conclusions of this short video is that the EU is a sui generis organization, and it is based on the 1957 treaty. There are several steps that were done, such as Maastricht in 1992, Amsterdam in 1999, the Nice in 2003, which was not approved, and the current Lisbon Treaty of 2009. Currently, there are 27 EU member states because the UK withdrawn from the EU. There are several candidate countries, which does not include Iceland, that withdrew the proposal in 2015, and there are 3 potential candidates, and the last one was only in June 2022, which is Georgia. Thank you for listening to me, and I hope to see you in the next video.